Hey everyone, this is Carcharocles. So here's my promised vlog or video discussion about the Jurassic Fight Club episode Deep Sea Killers, which depicts a battle between a pod of Miocene sperm whales and the legendary giant white shark Megalodon, the fish long called the marine paleontologist's very own T-Rex. One of the truly indisputable badasses of the oceans, alongside pliosaurs, mosasaurs, giant and colossal squid, Carcharocles, orcas, modern killer whales, and Basilosaurus, just to name a few. This episode, Deep Sea Killers, takes place during a geologic time epoch that spanned from about 23 to 5 million years ago, called the Miocene. At this time, prior to the completion of the Antarctic circumpolar currents and the closing of the seaway between North and South America by the Panama Land Bridge, the oceans were warmer than they are today, even with the concern of global warming, which we will get into at some point. Global warming today, that is. And this is also the time when kelp forests emerged. You associate kelp forests with colder waters today, but they are present in temperate and tropical waters. Whales were at their greatest diversity at this time, and the vast numbers of new species of whales became a dominant food source for a gigantic new predatory shark, Megalodon. This is a really interesting creature, as it very well demonstrates what the upper limits typically are for apex predators of large prey animals. You do get whales that have species quite a bit bigger, but those are filter feeders of just massive numbers of very tiny animals. Predatory dinosaurs such as Tyrannosaurus, Spinosaurus, and Giganotosaurus may have been ecologically comparable creatures on land, even though they were quite a bit lighter in weight than Megalodon. The point is, we don't seem to see predatory animals grow much past this limit. Modern sperm whales are about equal in size to most estimates of Megalodon. There was a 100-foot-long Liopleurodon, which was a species of Jurassic pliosaur, in the BBC's original Walking with Dinosaurs series, in the episode Cruel Sea. But that was an exaggeration, over-exaggeration actually. Liopleurodon size was in the 40 to maybe 50-foot range, not 100. So, as we saw, paleontologists throughout the years and decades found numerous prehistoric whale bones with huge gashes in them. As the episode says, some 9 inches long, 3 inches deep. Ribs, tail flukes, flipper bones, and when paleontologists fit the teeth of predators from this time period into the cuts, only one species tooth fit: Megalodon. The name Megalodon means, oh, so inventively, big tooth. As in big tooth, mega tooth, long tooth. Oh, crap's gonna bite me with those teeth, that's the last thing I'll ever see. Talking about the size of an adult Megalodon, you'll usually hear estimates of between 50 and 60 feet long. These may have been the largest individuals around. I've heard some suggest 70 or up to 80 feet long. That's really pushing it. Especially for a predator of large, slow reproducing mammals such as whales. Granted, there were a lot of whales at this time, but still, whales are really slow to reproduce. So, I mean, Megalodon did have other prey animals. Megalodon would eat such as seals and sea lions, manatees and dugongs, large fish. Probably more common in the oceans would have been adult megalodon between 40 and 50 feet, based on the reality that many individuals do not reach their maximum possible adult size for their species. In any case, even a 45-foot or 15-meter megalodon would have dwarfed the modern orca, killer whale, as well as many other whales in megalodon's time, including with the one featured in the episode, Brygmophyseter, and would have already been 3 times the length of a good-sized modern-day great white shark, so scary enough, even at 45 feet. Now, after about 14 minutes into the episode, we are introduced to Brygmophyseter, the biting sperm whale. In the Miocene, there were numerous species of sperm whales, most smaller than the modern sperm whale. Another was called Zygophyseter, and in the last decade, a gigantic sperm whale called Leviathan, from Leviathan, was discovered to have been alive at this time, and would have truly rivaled Megalodon as an apex predator. The Brygmophyseter and Zygophyseter really did not, at least not alone. They had to attack in a pod in order to be contendable, to anywhere near match that kind of strength. Jurassic Fight Club came out as Leviathan fossils were just beginning to be found, so that whale wasn't featured in the show. They instead focused on Brygmophyseter, which I believe they said was discovered from fossils stored away in museum collections in 1992. Brygmophyseter, it appears, had the ability to echolocate, and an article I found recently suggests that the echolocation had been an adaptation of cetaceans, which are dolphins, whales, and their relatives, for at least 30 million years. The article and others are listed down in the video description. I did not know that cetaceans could use sonar as a weapon before I saw this episode, though that was... Also, a whale of significant size can injure or kill a shark by ramming its head into the shark's gills. The gills, the nose, the eyes, these are sensitive areas in a shark, and the gills or eyes particularly, areas to attack if you're ever attacked by a shark yourself, if you can attempt to counterattack. Now, Megalodon is described in the documentary as having the exact same coloration as the great white shark. This is assumed for any Megalodon documentary or show or model. We don't know for certain that it did have this coloration. It makes sense that it would, as the two are both large coastal predators. And that coloration, which orcas and many cetaceans also have, the dark on top, light on the underside, is advantageous for hunting in the shallow ocean. It mimics the, if the prey is looking at the creature from underneath, they'll see, lighter color near the surface, where the light is coming from. If they're looking at it from down below, they'll see the dark half of the predator, looking down the dark ocean. I would be surprised if it works as well as it is suggested it does, but it does work. I mean, it's somewhat disruptive coloring. But still, this is assuming that Megalodon is, well, this and other similarities with the great white shark. Assumed Megalodon is nothing more than a scaled-up Carcharodon carcharias. And the great white shark likely is the closest possible living analogy to Megalodon. There are some very interesting similarities, and there are some very interesting differences. And they do seem to be not that distantly related. They are both the same type of shark. They're both mackerel sharks, members of the family Lamnidae. But some key differences, many paleontologists say, actually land them in two different genera, if that's the right plural of genus. Whereas the great white shark would be closely related to ancient mako sharks, and Megalodon descended from the Otodus lineage that began in the Paleocene. And Megalodon is now has the genus name of Carcharocles. Megalodon. A lot of the differences that land them in two separate genus are based on the teeth, since the teeth, the jaw itself, along with a few vertebrae. Megalodon vertebrae are very, very rare. There are a few, but it's the teeth that most of these differences are based on. Here is a Megalodon tooth side by side with a great white shark's tooth. Both of them have serrated teeth meant for tearing apart flesh into pieces. But the Megalodon is a much more robust tooth. It's really similar to the difference between Megalodon having a Tyrannosaurus Rex-like tooth. Not quite the same shape, but you'll understand what I mean. And the great white shark and mako sharks having teeth similar to predatory dinosaurs that would rip flesh, whereas Megalodon or Tyrannosaurus Rex tooth much more cone-shaped than knife-shaped, meant for crushing bone. The great white shark's tooth is thinner and more delicate, and the Megalodon also has a scar on the base, where the great white shark's does not.
The great white fossil tooth is noticeably thinner and more gracile than the Megalodon tooth.
Well, let me do the converse here. Let me show you a very small Megalodon, about approximately the same size as this great white, and you can see that small size as the Megalodon doesn't look the same. Again, the serration densities are different. This tooth is distinct from this great white no matter how big you make it.
So, that clip was from another documentary, very much worth watching, from National Geographic, titled Megalodon, Monster Killer Sharks Still Alive? And it goes into more comparison between Megalodon and the great white shark. Now there's a scientist in this documentary named Gordon Hubble, totally different from the Hubble of the Hubble Space Telescope, who put together the most complete set of Megalodon teeth from a single fossil specimen ever found. Now, asked scientists who came to visit, or for a bite, how they thought the teeth of the shark would be arranged in the jaw. So back when they were trying to figure out what Megalodon's jaw was really like, how it was different from the great white shark. And again, one major difference, another of them, found was that Megalodon lacked the smaller third tooth from the middle of the jaw on each side that the great white has. When the jaws were completed, it turned out that this Megalodon, from which the model was built, had a jaw 7.5 feet tall, 8.5 feet wide, and 254 teeth. And you can see a 45-foot model of the Megalodon at the San Diego Natural History Museum. So, talking about the battle that we see in Deep Sea Killers, the episode. Megalodon comes and attacks a lone Brygmophyseter that has strayed from the pod. Brygmophyseter was about the size of a modern-day orca. Megalodon is so much bigger that it's really not a contest. It's an ambush hunter. It's over for that Brygmophyseter. The pod comes in to drive away the shark, to try to rescue their fallen pod member. But Megalodon does escape. It's not killed by the pod in the episode. I assume that did happen sometimes. I'd say the battle that we see in the episode goes pretty much the way you'd expect it to go. And it's based on lots of fossil evidence. Megalodon would, from the bite marks, or bite carvings, really, that we see in fossil whale bones, attack the flippers, the tail, for obvious reasons that are discussed. If it takes those, the whale is completely helpless. So let's talk about the idea that Megalodon is still alive in the oceans of today. So here's what we hear a couple of people say at the end of the Megalodon, Mustard Shark's Still Alive documentary, which, yeah, watch that one too. Is it possible that Megalodon has somehow survived in today's deep waters? Less than 1% of the deep waters are explored. This is a hypothesis that you'll hear from people, a lot of Megalodon fans, sometimes. And it is true that most of the deep oceans, a lot of the oceans, is still unexplored. However, here's the problem. Megalodon was not a deep-sea predator. Oh, it had some ability to dive, but its main food source, as mentioned before, whales of the time, which were not the same frequent, or I should say more, over long periods of time, long distance, migratory and deep divers that they are today. Pinnipeds, sirenians, other shallow water sharks. These were all, or by far mostly, creatures found in coastal regions. Megalodon fossils found worldwide are found in rock layers depicting coastal environments. Added to that, it was not the type of body design of sharks that actually do live in deep water. Also, a marine predator of that scale would have found it almost impossible to escape being seen alive by humans. Yes, there are reports of giant sharks being seen, but when investigated, these usually turn out to be whale sharks, basking sharks, and megamouth sharks, all of which feed on very tiny animals and are no threat to humans. I think that if Megalodon was still around and being encountered live by humans, the distinction would be pretty obvious. I think hiding Megalodon would have been equally hard, or harder than finding the Loch Ness Monster. It would be more difficult to cover up Megalodon's survival than to go out and actually find the Loch Ness Monster, which I do not believe exists. Well, Megalodon certainly did. You know what I mean. Now, this does not rule out, however, that there may be some elusive deep-sea shark that is of a similar scale to Megalodon, alive and not yet found, but it would be quite different in its shape, habits, and prey. Would definitely not be the Megalodon that we know from fossils. So, I had the idea some time ago of, wouldn't it be awesome if someone made a life-size Megalodon plushie? Can we make plushies that big? Then you could crawl inside through the jaws and teeth and curl up in a little ball in the giant shark's soft, warm belly. Okay, I weird myself out sometimes. So, okay. Why is Megalodon no longer around? Megalodon died out about between 2 and 1.8 million years ago. Between 6 and 2 million years ago, the oceans cooled, which had a lot to do with, again, the closing of the completion of the Panama Land Bridge, which had a whole other story of effects on terrestrial ecosystems, the North-South American faunal interchange, which is very, very interesting. It redirected a lot of ocean currents, and also the Antarctic circumpolar currents were completed to what we see in the modern day. So the cooling of the oceans had a lot to do with that. And in response, a lot of the whales that survived became adapted to cooler waters, adapted to migrating the ocean currents over very long distances. The larger whales no longer stayed year-round in the warm tropical waters. In addition to that cooling, the waters themselves cooling, a lot of large animals on the land and sea were dying out in this time period, and Megalodon was so hyper-specialized to go after large prey that with those large food sources gone, the species had become too specialized to be able to adapt to anything else. So it reached the point of unsustainability. I think it's estimated that 3/4 of the whales disappeared. And sharks, when they are stressed by their environment for food resources, will turn to cannibalism. And if the shark turned to cannibalism, this wiped out its reproduction. And there is also the hypothesis of competition with orcas, the same species that we see today, if you go along with the idea that there are several species of orcas, still the modern Orchinus orca had arrived, was believed even more intelligent and more adapted to living and working and hunting in pods than whales like Zygophyseter and Brygmophyseter. And so, much like them, one orca alone, not a problem for Megalodon. Giant pod can take out a Megalodon. So, in the end, no. I do not believe Megalodon is still around. Someone would have seen it, and again, very fascinating creature. Awesome. Would have loved to see it. Would have loved to be able to see it in the world today. I don't think it's out there anymore.